Okay. Well, we got 23 minutes, so
Shit. All right, let's jump in.
this might be a 3-parter in that case.
Oh, for sure.
So, okay, but there's one thing I want to do. Okay, you want to do something weird?
Sure.
Okay, we've never done intros, and I hear that it's all the rage, and apparently robots read the transcripts,
Mm.
and we're just not doing it right. So, I'm Symon Oliver, design director and co-founder at Tennis.
I'm Marcello Gortana, executive director, co-founder at Tennis.
Tennis is a B2B web and product design agency. So yeah, great intro, solid intro. Look at us. Okay, so yeah, last week we covered when do you know your CMS is holding you back? And then this week we're going to cover whatever we can in the next 20-ish minutes, but it was types of CMSs, what to look for in a CMS, what to avoid, common misunderstandings, and my favorite is why open source is bad most of the time. So yeah.
Okay, cool. Let's just start with types of CMSs because there's a couple categories, I think.
Totally.
Website builders, traditional CMSs.
Yeah. I think
visual
like there's
development CMSs.
Wait, what ones?
Visual development CMSs.
Wow.
So actually I saw that as a new term for Webflow and Framer. Visual development CMS.
You know what? Framer makes sense to be a visual development CMS.
Yeah.
It's more
exactly in that category.
It's like Figma becomes a CMS or Framer. You can design.
But maybe Webflow is, if you were to say like, it doesn't really fall into the traditional CMS category with like WordPress, Drupal, Joomla. And it's not, the last one is Headless and Enterprise CMSs, which would include like Contentful, Strappy, things like that. Is there anything missing there, you think?
No, yeah. My list is traditional monolithic CMS, enterprise, headless. Site builders is the category that I would put Webflow, Squarespace, Wix in.
You would put Webflow, okay.
Yeah, well, it is a site builder.
Yeah.
It doesn't fall into the Framer area. It is a site builder with a CMS and hosting built in. So you can do custom pages. Like, this is why it's so much more scalable than something like WordPress. It's like the evolution of what WordPress Elementor was trying. But it's all like really tightly encapsulated as a singular product. But I think where Webflow is leading that market segment is that they call themselves a web experience platform. They're trying to own that market segment as a completely new thing, the same way Vitamin Water owned water or like enhanced water. And if you look at Webflow, they're integrating AEO, SEO, like all of this technical stuff that something like Squarespace and Wix just have, I don't know, they've kind of fallen off on. They focus too much on the page building aspect, whereas Webflow is like CMS, hosting, page builder, SEO, AEO, scalability. They have an enterprise tier. Like, they're just leading the market for the site builder category.
Yeah. So we have site builders, traditional CMS. Do you want to break that down a bit? Explain.
Yeah. Well, there's one more I wanted to add too, because it does actually come up a lot for us in the B2B space. Specialty CMS platforms. So these are like specialized tools like Shopify. Shopify is like an e-com platform, but they're e-com first, website after kind of thing. And then there's IMIS, which I know you talk about on your sales calls. And it's like,
I'm sure there's other ones too that are like, in other industries, IMIS is very popular in any sort of like member engagement or member management organizations or member-based organizations. But I'm sure there's probably some other organizations out there that are outside of the membership I'm sure there's like some CRMs that also offer some sort of website deployer, or I'm sure there's other non-member based industry software that also tries to tackle the website experience too. Because it's kind of like an easy attempt for those companies that are already offering some software
Yeah.
that touches that side of the business.
Yeah.
But
I
IMIS
think
is a
it's
big
a
one.
I think it's a risky bet though. Like IMIS is a member management platform at the end of the day, and then they've just
Yeah, totally.
incorporated the CMS side, and that's also why a lot of the calls you have with member-based organizations is about migrating off of IMIS because it's so restrictive on the marketing side. Maybe great for member management, very bad for the marketing management.
Yeah, and IMIS is just one. There's so many. There's like Wild Apricot. There's I can't remember all the other ones off the top of my head. I'm still learning about this whole side of the membership uh,
Mhm.
software industry. But yeah, so IMIS, I guess, is the most popular one. But yeah, there's Wild Apricot and there's a bunch of other ones. And they are all AMS software systems.
Mhm.
I can't remember what. Association management software,
Yeah,
basically,
yeah.
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 Um,
Nice. Well, so let's talk
so
a
that
little bit about
what was that specialty, right? You
that was
called that,
specialty CMS
yeah.
platforms,
So
which I
website
think
builders, traditional CMSs, visual CMSs like Framer, headless enterprise CMSs, and then
site
specialty
builders, yeah.
CMSs. Yeah,
There's a whole category that I have never explored, but you've probably come across this term. It's the DXP,
I
the
haven't
digital
actually.
experience platforms. And
Mm.
like I've seen them come up, and I will be very transparent. I've never dug too deep into what these platforms are. I think it's definitely a bit of a gap in my
What
knowledge.
are some brands? Some examples?
The only one I've heard of is Content Stack.
Yeah,
And like that's about it. Like you maybe you could throw Adobe Experience Manager into this because it does
oh yeah, it
incorporate the
does.
orchestration, analytics, personalization side of
Sitecore.
things.
What about Sitecore?
No, like that's maybe where those two
Oh yeah, it
categories are
wouldn't
really
be right.
blended because it's
Yeah,
enterprise CMS, like Sitecore,
yeah, yeah.
Sitefinity, AEM, Adobe
Weird.
Experience.
Cantico also call themselves a digital experience platform.
Don't don't mention them. Can't go. I
So
didn't
does
know they're still
Sitecore.
around.
They call themselves digital experience as well.
Oh man.
Interesting.
Maybe that segment is just having an identity crisis and they're in transition.
Yeah, yeah, maybe.
But yeah, I would say Adobe Experience Manager is in the DXP realm.
Yeah.
Um, but man, both of those categories carry serious costs for the teams. Like I mentioned on our last, like our
Okay.
part one is AEM. Last I checked, it's 100K for a license per year for a
Damn.
company. And I think the
Um,
Ontario government runs a lot of their sites on AEM, but the developer pool, the vendor pool for that is so small. So
yeah.
if you're a vendor
Before we
willing to
jump into
commit,
that
yeah.
detail, explain headless CMSs.
Oh yeah, headless CMSs are fun. So headless CMSs, think of it as like all of your content and data or like product information is housed in a content management platform, but it's the non-visual layer. So it's all data at this point. It's like data and assets, and it's all in a really structured backend. And then they
Mhm.
surface all of that stuff via APIs, which is really cool because it's an API driven thing. You can plug in any front end you really want to use with a headless CMS. So there's Contentful is big. Sanity is an incredible headless CMS that like it is really powerful. Strappy is a really good out of the box, like low level of effort implementation kind of thing. But Sanity, I'd say, is more of a SaaS model where it's a managed service, which is
Mhm.
really cool. Contentful is kind of in that domain. Strappy, you're gonna host it yourself. But yeah, so
So
the whole
what's like a
idea.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. No, it's just like the whole idea is your data lives elsewhere and it's uncoupled from the front end, or loosely coupled, I should say, from the front end, so that you
Mhm,
can have your front end people working in one way and your back end people working in a different way. And then your content people all delivering and augmenting the content through the CMS.
mhm.
It's very much like non-visual. Some of them, like Sanity, have tried to add a visual layer because that is a complaint from the marketing team. Is like you're managing and maintaining data, not really building pages. So it's really good for scale, but it does have some drawbacks. But you had a question. Um,
Um, just for the audience to kind of like illustrate what a headless CMS is. What is a real world example of like the type of organization or environment, marketing environment that this would make sense? In my mind, I'm thinking like multiple platforms. You're managing multiple interfaces. Could be like website, web app, software, with a single source of content.
yeah, no, that's exactly right. It's like website, web app, maybe a product catalog as well. Like,
Yeah,
and your product team needs a single source of truth for all of those products. It's really strong at that because you can have the product person managing your catalog of products. That's their one sole focus, is to do that. And if you have a single source of truth for something like that, it also means that if you have a company who has regional deployments for websites
yeah,
or product categories from that catalog, headless CMS is going to excel at that. The
yeah,
whole like regionality, localization, all of that can be really built in with a headless CMS
yeah. Cool.
in a way that
Yeah.
I do think something like Webflow, it can do it, but the route to get there is just a little rockier.
Yeah, and I imagine
So
like scaling it up would be way more complicated. Actually, it would be terrible a terrible experience compared to
yeah.
if you were scaling up a headless. Like if you had more channels, and you were deploying like a headless CMS strategy.
hmm But so I think it's really strong in that area, but there's a couple drawbacks. It's just the upfront investment because it
Yeah, it's
does,
a very specific use case for sure.
yeah, it does require a lot more on the data strategy and structure side of things to future proof it. You have to
Hmm.
remember that with headless CMS, if you have a field, right? Like let's say the header field for a product page, like that field tends to be fixed in the CMS. There's no, well, I also want to add a subtitle. If there's no subtitle field, sorry guys, you're not adding it. Like
Hmm.
some of them have tried to get around this, but that is one of the failings is it's your data structure tends to be very strict when it
Yeah.
comes to content and data entry. So it's a blessing and a curse. It's like
Hmm.
both its power and its weakness.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Um, how much time do we have?
We got nine
Because I feel like
minutes.
the next. Okay, I feel like we should call it here because I feel like the next step is going into all these categories and basically breaking down, like going into a little bit more detail about when, when, and why
Yeah.
you should
Well, the
potentially
next one
visit.
is what to look for in a CMS.
Yeah,
Right. But we didn't really cover traditional CMSs at
true.
all.
Yeah,
I think in that time we could easily
yeah,
get through this. So yeah, do you want to name a couple traditional?
yeah. Like WordPress, Drupal, Joomla, I guess are the biggest ones.
Yeah.
What
Oh,
do
I
you
haven't
think
heard
about that?
Joomla in a long time. But
Me too.
yeah,
I used to use it a long time ago.
WordPress, Drupal, they are the
I
most
haven't
common
actually.
ones.
It's a
Do
good
you?
point. I have not heard anyone on Joomla in maybe one in the last. I can't remember who it was, but there was someone that was on Joomla that we spoke to in the last couple of years, but probably only one.
Yeah, I think in the last 7 years I haven't heard Joomla until that conversation you had.
Interesting.
So, but yeah, WordPress, Drupal, and I think a lot of the reason people select them to begin with is because they're free. in scare quotes, like, um, they're open source, they're free, but that is so misleading, and we have to explain this all the time, right? WordPress can be good. Drupal, on the other hand, is they inhabit a weird market area with higher education and the cultural sector. I don't know how that happened. I'm sure there's a history. Um, but both could be good. But WordPress has like plugin sprawl. You think you're getting a free platform, and then before you know it, you're spending, hundreds to thousands on plugins to just extend the WordPress core. You're also spending hundreds or thousands on maintaining the security and stability of WordPress. So you need to reserve a team to handle this. If you can't do that, it's probably a bad idea to go for it. It's either an internal team or an external team. So while they're both free and open source, one of the problems with open source is you're going to have heavy maintenance, fragility, security issues, plugin sprawl to extend the core, custom code to extend it. And in order to do all of that, you need the resources in place. So you're either hiring a team on retainer or you're building a team internally, which is what a lot of organizations do with Drupal.
Yeah, I feel like you mentioned free being like a reason why it's appealing. I feel like there's a couple different ways people get into WordPress. One is you're a small business and it's the first thing that you go for because it's like free, it's approachable.
Yeah.
Or you're a larger organization, you don't really have like a design or development department internally, and what WordPress is just a big brand name, right? Like everyone knows who WordPress is. So those people also get into WordPress by accident. And then those are kind of like the two scenarios. I feel like the organizations we talk to that have some level of technology or design support internally typically aren't on WordPress. But there's a lot of large organizations that found themselves on WordPress and have basically gotten to a point where it's just too restrictive or too risky.
Yeah.
Exactly. And a lot of times we're moving people away because of that. But it also depends on the organization. Some of them have just a mandate to be on WordPress because they've got lots of WordPress properties. And so the IT team is just trying to standardize everything, which also makes sense. So yeah, it's an interesting, WordPress is in an interesting place right now as a business, I think.
Yeah. And I think we both see this in different areas. Like I end up doing a lot of our like higher ed calls, and higher education, like colleges, universities, they tend to be, they lean more towards the Drupal side. WordPress is obviously part of that, but they're doing like internal self-hosted, like on-premises WordPress builds so that their IT department can manage it. The same with Drupal. I know a few colleges and universities that are exclusively on Drupal, and it's a constant headache for them. But what has happened is because the decision was made to go with that platform, they scaled up the team and the infrastructure. So turning that ship around just isn't possible. No matter the pain, the present pain for that right now is not worth the entire like re-platform effort.
Yeah.
Plus, like, what are you going to do?
There's just a lot of fear, and there's a lot of like cultural norms too that get created when you're on something for so long.
Oh, sorry. Go for it.
Yeah, it was just that's it. That's my whole point.
Yeah, like when you're on it for that long. But you've built a team.
Migration. That too.
What are you going to do? You're going to just say like, oh, well, we're moving from Drupal to Webflow. You either need to retrain or restructure. And like no one wants to have that conversation. So if you have a qualified Drupal and WordPress team to maintain that stack, that's amazing. That is what those stacks require. So if a company, be it higher ed or public, has built a team to maintain that stack, stick with it. Like you've gone the right way about it. You've built the team, you've built the internal infrastructure and resources. But yeah, maybe you just need an external person to come in and help figure out the next stage and the next level of where that can go. But
Totally.
you've at least got the main issue figured out, which is the maintainability, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Nice.
All
Well, I
right.
feel like we're taking this to a part 3 with what to
Yes.
look for in a CMS next week. This is
And this, yeah, what to look for, but I think also what are the strengths and weaknesses of each category?
yeah,
Because I think those are different things.
sounds good. All right. Well,
Yeah,
let's see.
sweet. All right, cool.
Okay. Well, have a good one.
See ya.
Talk to you later,
Bye.
man.